As a Jew, I feel safer in Israel than I do in the United States, even at this time of war.
I'm going to introduce Natalie by asking the question that probably is a good starting point, which is, what brought you to be in Israel this October?
So growing up, I've been going to Israel basically almost every year my entire life. And this summer was no different. I went for a friend's wedding, and I ended up staying for the holidays to be with friends and family. And some of my friends from Israel told me about this party. And I figured they're going, it's happening while I'm there. I might as well just go with them. And I guess we could get into how everything started on that day. So I arrived at the Nova Festival with 3 friends, all Israeli. I was the only American in the group. And we got there at around 1 a.m. We danced for a couple hours, and then my friends were tired and they wanted to go back to our campsite, it was right by the dance floor, so you could still hear the music. We were very close to where everything was happening. And they wanted to go rest for a few hours and wake up to the sunrise set of the festival, of the party. And I decided, I don't know anyone else here, I'm gonna go with them. So we went to sleep at around 3, and instead of waking up to the sound of the sunrise set, we instead woke up to the sound of rockets. And something I always like to point out to people is the way we were woken up. So one of my friend's friends that was on the dance floor when the first rockets were sent over, she's Israeli, and she knew that we were sleeping at the time. So she came over back to our campsite and she came to wake us up. And this is the way she woke us up. She kind of nudged us awake and she was smiling and she said, "Boker tov, good morning, guys. I just wanted you guys to know a few rockets were intercepted overhead, but it's fine. It's normal for the area that we're in. There's really nothing to worry about. It'll probably just be a few. It'll pass and the party's going to continue. So nobody worry. Everything's fine." I want everyone in this room, I'm sure majority of the people in this room didn't grow up in Israel. And I want you guys to imagine being at a concert here in the States or anywhere else in the world where you grew up, and suddenly rockets are intercepted over your head. None of you would react in such a calm manner the way that this girl or all the other Israelis at this festival reacted. And that's just a testament. That just goes to show how unfortunate it is, but how normal this is for them. And that's one of the main questions that I started to get after October 7th from interviewers. They asked, why didn't you guys run right away? Rockets are being intercepted over your head. And I said, because if Israelis were to stop everything that they were doing, every time rockets are sent their way and intercepted overhead, they would simply get nothing done. Unfortunately, this is their reality. This is something they grow up with. But as one of the only Americans in the group, I realized that she was a little extra focused on me, and she wanted to make sure that I was calm and that I was okay. And I kind of looked to my Israeli friends to see how they were reacting, and I tried to follow suit. So we all stayed fairly calm in the beginning. And we just stood up and we looked up at the sky and we started counting the rockets. And at first we were calm. It was 1, 2, then it was 5, then it was 10, then it was 15, then it was 20. And obviously we started to get a little nervous. We started to realize this isn't just another ordinary situation. And then after maybe 10 minutes, the festival security shuts off the music and asks everyone to please evacuate to their cars. So we start packing up our stuff. We're still fairly calm because in our heads we figured, okay, we have the Iron Dome. Our biggest fear was maybe scraps from intercepted rockets hitting us as we're trying to drive out of the festival grounds. But overall, we were still pretty calm and pretty hopeful that we're all going to get out and get home safely. So we started heading to our cars, and on the way to the cars, I figured we're going to be stuck in traffic for a while. There's one dirt road, which I'm sure you guys have all seen the video of this dirt road with all the cars pulled over to the side were all burnt. So we figured there's one dirt road. There's about 3,000 people at this festival. We're all trying to leave at the same time. There's going to be traffic. So I asked my friends if I can go use the bathrooms before we start heading out. And they were like, sure, there's no rush. Go ahead. We're going to wait for you by the car. So I go to these yellow bathroom stalls. And not until maybe 2 weeks after October 7th did I realize how much I was putting my life at risk by going to those bathroom stalls. Because if I was in those stalls maybe 15 minutes later, I'm sure you guys all saw the video of the Hamas terrorists coming to those stalls and shooting at every stall, trying to kill anyone who was inside. That wasn't too long after I was there, but thankfully I left before they arrived. So after going to the bathrooms, we went to our car and we start driving out. And obviously, as I assumed, there was traffic and we're driving very slow. And the festival security is kind of on either side of the road, kind of herding us like sheep, trying to get us out safely. And after a few minutes of driving, they start yelling at all of us to please pull our cars over to the side of the road and get out and start running. And at that point, we still didn't know that there were terrorists on foot. So we couldn't understand why they would tell us to run from rockets. It didn't make any sense to us. But we figured they have our best interest at heart. We should just listen to them. So we pull our car over and we're sitting in the car for a few moments and we're just kind of looking at each other confused. And that's when we heard the first gunshots. And as soon as we heard the first gunshots, we opened our doors and we started to run. And people were running in every direction. It was complete chaos. Nobody knew what direction was the direction of safety. And another one of the most common questions I got asked when I first started doing interviews was, how did you know what decisions to make? In that situation, how did you know if to run left or right? How did you know if you should hide or keep running? And at first, it was very hard for me to answer that question because the answer is nobody knew. Nobody knew what decision was the right decision. And a few months after the attack, I was speaking at a vigil at Columbus Circle, and a man came up to me and he said that he had seen a few of my interviews and he saw how hard it was for me to answer that question. And he told me he had interviewed many Holocaust survivors in his life, and that when they were asked how they knew what decisions to make in life and death situations, that they coined a term, and it was called a choiceless choice. And basically, the meaning of that is that in a life and death situation, you don't know what choice is going to save your life or get you killed, but you simply have to make a choice in that moment. And that perfectly describes every choice we made while running from the Hamas terrorists. They were all choiceless choices. An example of one of those choices was we started running in a certain direction. And after about maybe 15 minutes, we decided to check our phones and make sure we're not running towards Gaza. And we realized that we are. And then we had to change directions. So we start running in another direction. And after maybe 10, 15 minutes again, we see dozens of people running in our direction. And we realize that they're being pursued, they're being chased after, they're being shot at. And we realize that we not only have Hamas terrorists chasing us from behind, but they're also coming from the left. So now we have to turn right. And we have to hope that that choice isn't another wrong choice. Another example of a choiceless choice was as we were running, I think it was about maybe an hour or two into running, we passed by a group of friends of my 3 friends that I came with, and they said, hey guys, we're over here, we're hiding in this ditch, come hide in this ditch with us. And we start crawling into the ditch to hide with them until one of my friends starts yelling at us that this is a bad idea. If we hide in this ditch and the Hamas terrorists find us, they're gonna shoot us on the spot. And he said that hiding is not an option. The only option for survival is to continue running. And that was a choiceless choice that actually ended up saving our lives, because unfortunately we later found out that our friends who stayed back and hid in the ditch did not make it out. I want to say about 2 hours, maybe almost 3 hours into running, we passed by a police officer. And this was the first time that we saw anyone in uniform during all this running. And we asked him, where is everyone? Where's the army? Where are the police? And he said that most of the people that he worked with had been shot and killed, that his police station had been taken over by the terrorists. And we asked him, can you call anyone for backup? And he said no, because they also took over the radio station. And the most he could do was walk alongside us. And as he was walking alongside us, we could hear them yelling on his walkie-talkie. We could hear the screams of the terrorists. And he told us to just continue walking in the direction of the sun, because in that direction was a town called Patish, and it was one of the nearest towns to get to safety. So we continue walking, and about 4 hours into walking, and when I say running and walking, anytime we didn't hear gunshots for a few minutes, we would slow down to catch our breath, because obviously we're in the sun, it's hot, everyone's running out of water, we had nothing to eat for hours. And after about 4 hours, me and my friend saw a little tree, and we decided to sit under this tree to get some shade from the sun. We hadn't heard gunshots in a few minutes, and we decided it was a good time to take a little rest. While we're sitting under this tree, there may be 10 other people sitting with us, and we're all kind of just sitting there talking. None of us really understand what's happening at the moment. A lot of us didn't understand the severity of the situation still until, honestly, days or weeks after the attack, when all these stories started coming out. So at that time, we're just talking, and we're all shocked, we're all confused. And suddenly we saw a white pickup truck driving in our direction. And for all of us, our automatic reaction was that these were terrorists coming to kill us, because, as I'm sure most of you know, that's the type of car that they usually drove. And I just remember all of us half getting up, contemplating running, and then all of us simultaneously realizing we have nowhere to run to. If this is a terrorist, they're in a car, they have guns. And I just remember everyone under this tree simultaneously sitting down and without a word, kind of communicating to each other through nods and smiles that it was nice knowing you, and just accepting that this is most likely the end. But luckily for us, it wasn't a terrorist. It was a man from the town of Patish named Moshe. Him and his son, I was able to get in touch with him months after the attacks. And I learned that him and his son on that day drove back and forth from Patish to the festival grounds for about 8 or 10 hours. And together they probably saved around 300 to 400 lives that day. He picked us up, he put us in the back of his truck, and he dropped us off in Patish. And at that time, I didn't even get a moment to ask him what his name was. I hardly even saw his face, because as soon as he dropped us off, he turned around again to go save more people. He's truly an angel. And once we got to Patish, everyone from the town, they brought us to the local bomb shelter. They brought us food. They brought us chamin, cholent, all types of food of Shabbat. That they took such good care of us. There were people walking around reading off lists of names that they were receiving from parents whose kids were at the festival, who lost touch with their kids, in hopes that they were going to give their parents good news that their kid was there. That's kind of the first moment where I really saw the Jewish people come together. And I only saw it more and more as time went on after the attacks. After the attacks, I went back home to New York, and I started doing interviews. And one of the questions that this one interviewer, for the most part, the questions that I got asked were about October 7th in the beginning. That's what people wanted to hear about. That's what they wanted to talk about. They wanted to ask me about the story I just told you guys, about the story of survival. And then one interviewer called me and interviewed me for an article. And I'm speaking to her, and I'm speaking about October 7th, and then she starts asking me about life post-October 7th. And I said one line that, to me, this sentence wasn't that crazy. I didn't think it was that meaningful. I didn't think it was even going to be in the article. But this sentence ended up being the title of the article, because to this interviewer, what I said was so crazy and so outlandish that she decided to make it the whole title. And what I said was, as a Jew, I feel safer in Israel than I do in the United States, even at this time of war. And since that article came out, that's basically all any interviewer wanted to talk about. They would give me a few minutes to talk about October 7th, and then they would start asking me about what I said. And I'm happy that they wanted to talk about it, because I wanted to explain to them why that's not a crazy statement and why we don't feel safe. But it really became basically the topic of discussion after that. It was mostly about what happened since then. And since then, my entire life just turned to a whole different track. Before October 7th, I was just a Jewish girl working in real estate, living in New York, never really felt fearful of the fact that I'm Jewish. I remember growing up, the first time that I witnessed any form of anti-Semitism was when I went to visit my family friends in France. And I remember we were on the train, and I was wearing, it was either a Hamsa or a Jewish star necklace, and it was out of my shirt. And my family friend told me to tuck it inside my shirt, and I couldn't even understand why. I was like, that's such a weird thing to say. Why would I do that? And she said, because if someone realizes that we're Jewish, they might start yelling at us, try to attack us, cursing at us. And I remember thinking to myself, how sad. The place where you grew up, the place that you call home, you don't feel 100% safe being 100% yourself. And then the New York that I came back to after October 7th kind of feels like that. And it makes me very sad, because my whole life I've always been Natalie, a Jewish New Yorker. But now I don't feel 100% safe in my own home. And since then, I've had the opportunity to meet many people and share my story. And the Combat Anti-Semitism movement had reached out to me to send me to DC to share my story with senators and to put a face to what happened on October 7th, because a lot of people have been dehumanizing the Jewish people, and we needed to make it human again, and we needed to put a face to the story instead of just reading an article. And since then, I've had the privilege to be able to start working with them. And I truly think that that opportunity has also helped me a lot with the trauma that comes along with experiencing something like this, the trauma of fearing for your life. Being able to share my story and speak out, and on a day-to-day basis work towards a better future and feel comfortable in my surroundings, I think has helped a lot with that trauma. And unfortunately, a lot of my friends don't have that privilege. A lot of my friends feel alienated in their workspace, in their schools. But I do feel very fortunate to be here today, to be able to share my story with all of you, to now on a day-to-day basis work towards hopefully a better future for all the Jewish people. And yeah, it's unfortunate the way that I got here, but I feel that working in this environment, working in the Jewish space, I feel like this is where I was meant to be this whole time. And I got here in a very unconventional way, but I'm happy to be here.